On top of that, your blood is pooling to your head because our bodies are designed to pump blood against gravity.
Right.
And to keep it from pooling in our feet. Our heart knows how to do it that way. Our blood vessels are designed to keep it moving up against gravity and down.
Yeah.
But when you're upside down, it doesn't have the same capability
Right.
to fight against gravity that way. So all the blood in your body starts going to the lowest point, which is your head, or in this case, if he had his arms above his head, it would be his arms and his hands. And this causes blood vessels to rupture, giving you a nosebleed and worse, a brain hemorrhage. The pressure would also cause your eyes to bulge and your face to bruise.
Yeah, that's what happened to Elvis.
Yeah.
When he died, because he was like face over, and his face was all purple and stuff, people were saying.
If he died.
Right, that's true. If he did die.
But the actual number one reason you die from being upside down for too long is heart failure.
Huh.
So all of that blood that's moving to your heart is overflowing it, and it's freaking your heart out. So your heart starts working in overtime to pump it out and to get it to your other extremities. And also, at the same time, it's not getting the oxygen it needs. So it basically just shuts off. So there's really no magic number for how long someone can survive upside down. A man in Utah was stuck in a cave upside down for 28 hours before he died.
Damn.
I know, it's a really sad story. He had called his family to say goodbye because rescuers could not. It was terrible. And most physicians say that a healthy person would most likely be able to last for 24 to 48 hours before dying.
Okay.
Now, Kendrick Johnson was last seen at 1:27, I think, p.m. on Thursday and discovered around 10:30 Friday. So that's almost 21 hours.
Yeah.
But who knows? Maybe he had a heart condition that nobody knew about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I tried to see if the coroner placed a time of death, but I couldn't see anything.
Yeah.
I know that whenever my mom died, we found her at 3 o'clock on Sunday.
Yeah.
And they put time found instead of time of death.
Right.
So maybe they did that in his case.
Yeah.
But I think that that's important to remember considering the controversy around this case. Because the time of death, I think, is a really important thing.
Okay.
Because let's say the coroner said it was 2 o'clock on Thursday.
Yeah.
He didn't die from being upside down then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So after the sheriff's department declares Kendrick's death accidental, they close the case. But Kendrick's family spent the following weeks peacefully protesting and advocating for their son because they felt like they did a really terrible job investigating it from the beginning.
Uh-huh.
And not only that, but they're hearing a lot of rumors and a lot of things aren't adding up to them. They were determined to have a department outside the county to do an investigation because they felt like, for whatever reason, the sheriff and the deputies in this county were trying to cover this up and make it look like an accident as hard as they could.
Yeah, we see that a lot. Like in a lot of cases, you've got the family members that are trying to get an outside source or an outside investigation done.
Well, yeah, because in small towns, the sheriff probably grew up in that town with half the people there.
Right.
Which makes it more likely for them to do a cover-up for a friend of theirs. You know what I mean? Small towns, I think,
they're sketch.
There's a lot of sketchy shit happening. This had cover-up written all over it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you the reasons why.
Well, I can already think of one. No kid said that they would crawl in through the top. That doesn't even make sense that you would try that at all.
Agreed. Here's the other reasons why the family thought it was a cover-up from the beginning. The whole unrolling him and rolling him back up for pictures was weird to them. And not only that, but Georgia law requires that police and first responders notify the coroner as soon as a deceased person is found, but police waited 5 hours in this case before they called the coroner.
That is not as soon.
What were they doing for 5 fucking hours?
Not letting the family in to identify him.
No. The coroner, Bill Watson, actually gave an interview to the media and said that the whole scene was compromised whenever he got there. But then he later wrote an email to the news reporter asking him to destroy the interview tape that he didn't want to be shown.
Ooh.
The police said that the 5-hour delay was because they worked the scene from the outside in. And as soon as they got to Kendrick's body, they called the coroner.
They're in a gym, right?
Yes.
So why can't they just see across the way, halfway down the court, and be like, hey, there's a body, let's call the coroner now? Right.
It doesn't make any sense. And you're telling me that they had to, if they thought this was an accident, what took 5 hours to process in this scene?
If they thought it was an accident, why would you start outside in?
Right. And he's also saying, what, they didn't go over and confirm that he was dead?
Yeah.
they just took this teacher's word for it?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. Another thing that screamed cover-up was in a few of the pictures that police took at the scene, there was a pair of shoes with orange laces over by the bleachers.
Uh-huh.
These did not belong to Kendrick. They were not the shoes underneath in the mats. They were not the shoes on top of the mat.
It's someone else's shoes.
Someone else's shoes. However, in a close-up picture of this shoe with orange laces, it looks like there's blood over them.
Really?
Yet the police did not collect them, left them there, so of course they disappeared. There was also a gray hoodie over by the bleachers. Again, looked like it had blood on the sleeve. They did not collect it, so it disappeared. Now, when they were asked why they didn't collect the shoes and the hoodie, they said that they tested them at the scene and the dark red droplets were not blood, so they left them there. That doesn't even if they tested negative for blood, I feel like someone doing an extensive investigation would collect them regardless.
And try to find out whose they are.
Right. There was also blood dripping down a wall, and police said that they tested it, and it was blood, but it didn't belong to Kendrick, and they concluded that it wasn't related to their crime scene, quote-unquote, anyway, and they did say crime scene.
Huh.
I thought that was pretty interesting.
That is very interesting.
Another piece of evidence that confused Kendrick's parents were the 2 pairs of shoes in the mat. The white ones that were up by his feet that weren't on his actual feet. They said that it looked like they had been thrown in on top. The parents believed that Kendrick had been beaten either to death or unconscious and then rolled up in this mat and then stood up. So they believed that these white tennis shoes were thrown in on top of him as an afterthought.
Okay.
Because they were just loose in the top of the hole.
Yeah.
However, to play devil's advocate, you could say that if he did crawl in there, he could have kicked them off while he was struggling.
Right.
The biggest piece of evidence that made everybody question this was the black shoe found at the very bottom of this rolled up mat. The fact that it was clean, yet underneath it was a pool of blood and vomit.
Yeah, that's weird.
Because if Kendrick is suspended upside down in this mat, and there was blood and vomit on his arms because they were rolled up over him,
right,
it would have dripped onto this shoe, then around the shoe and onto the floor.
Right.
Because this opening is only a foot wide. I mean, a shoe's not much smaller.
Yeah.
But the shoe was clean. His parents also never bought the theory that he climbed inside the mat. Just like you, the fact that everybody said that nobody ever did that was a red flag. Not only that, but the fact that he was 5'10" and his shoulders were 19 inches, that makes it almost impossible for him to shimmy down into a 14-inch gap.
Right.
Also, don't you think if you're 5'10" and you're shimmying down into a 6-foot rolled up mat, it would tip over?
I would think so, yeah.
If they're light enough that these kids can tip them to the side and pull shoes out.
Right.
I mean, that's a one-handed job, tipping it over, holding it, grabbing shoe. I mean, that's a two-handed job, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Then it feels like throwing an entire human in there and then them struggling to get out would tip it over.
Yeah.
But regardless whether you think it's an accident or a homicide, I think we can all agree that the investigation was shoddy at best.
Yeah, it was botched.
And that's all Jackie and Kenneth wanted, was someone to come in and do a legit investigation to find out how their son died.
Mm-hmm.
And in this documentary, it's crazy. They are fucking badasses. Watching them advocate for their child was pretty incredible.
Yeah.
I suggest everybody, even if you're listening to the story and you know everything because I've told you everything, you should watch it anyway, because they marched 17 miles every day to a courthouse.
Oh, wow.
They did all this peaceful protesting, and they were completely ignored. So to get some attention, they made a human chain in front of the courthouse and wouldn't let anybody in or out.
Oh.
It was fucking awesome. And the sheriff was like shoving and pushing them and trying to move them. And they went with the pure intention to get arrested because they knew that would make the news.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Huh.
It made national news. So that June, the family hired Dr. William Anderson, who's a forensic pathologist with 40 years of experience, to look at the records and the pictures from the autopsy.
Okay.
So all he could look at were the pictures.
Yeah.
But the first thing he wanted to do was look at Kendrick's lungs. I didn't know this, but when they do an autopsy, they measure and weigh every single organ.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Isn't that weird?
That is weird.
But it's to determine cause of death a lot of times.
Yeah.
And in this case, the first thing he wanted to look at were his lungs to see if they weighed more. Because if there was fluid going to them or an excess amount of blood...
Yeah, they should weigh more.
They didn't. In the record that the coroner took, Kendrick's lungs weighed a normal amount, which means that a coroner should have never listed his manner of death as positional asphyxia.
I smell a cover-up.
So once he told the family this, they decided they had to exhume Kendrick's body so he could get a look at the rest of it to try to figure out what the cause of death actually was.
Yeah.
So they go through this whole process, pull him out of his grave, send his body to Dr. Anderson, and when it gets there, he opens it up to find all of his organs are missing and he is stuffed with newspaper.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Nope. Is that not the craziest shit you've ever fucking heard?
Holy shit.
Including his brain. His brain was gone.
Is that normally looked at in an autopsy?
Yes. So, like I said, they take out every single organ, inspect it, weigh it, and then they're all usually placed into a bag and then put inside the cavity of the body.
Yeah.
Sewn up and then sent to a funeral home. In fact, in the documentary, they reached out to the president of the National Association of Medical Examiners, and he replied that he had never heard of a practice of not putting the bag of organs back in there and stuffing it with newspaper.
That's fucking weird.
He had never heard of that. Well, of course, Dr. Anderson tells the police this, and the police try to figure out what happened.
Yeah.
They call the coroner. He said that he placed the organs in the bag, put it inside the body, and sent it to the funeral home. The funeral home said that they never received any organs, that they were told that the organs had been destroyed through a natural process. So they decided to stuff him with newspapers so his body looked full.
Okay.
Well, then it becomes a he said, she said situation, because the coroner's saying he sent the organs, the funeral home's saying they never got them and they were told that they were destroyed, and nobody is saying where these organs went.
That's super strange.
So now Dr. Anderson is left with Kendrick's body, but none of his organs. So it's almost impossible to determine a cause of death without organs. However, he did notice some hemorrhaging to the right side of Kendrick's neck, and he goes back and looks at the original autopsy, and they never listed hemorrhaging in the right side of his neck.
Really?
However, the paramedics report did say that there was major bruising on the right side of Kendrick's jaw. So the paramedics listed it, the coroner did not, but Dr. Anderson is now finding it.
I don't like this coroner.
So in the documentary, Dr. Anderson explains that if someone experiences blunt force trauma to that part of their neck, the area where the carotid artery is, it could actually kill you from internal bleeding. Because you could damage the carotid artery so much.
Yeah, and then it just bleeds inside the body.
Right. He also said that the area on the side of the neck was not consistent with pooling of blood from being upside down.
Yeah.
It was definitely due to blunt force trauma. Well, Dr. Anderson's findings and all of the attention that Kendrick's parents were able to muster up in the media finally got the FBI to step in and reopen the case.
Good.
And a man named Michael Moore headed the investigation.
The Michael Moore?
No.
Oh.
One of the first things that the FBI investigators did was seize all the CCTV footage from inside the school. And here's where it gets tricky, and it's very hard to describe, but I'm going to do my best. There were cameras fucking everywhere, all over this school.
Okay.
In fact, there were 35 that covered the gym area alone.
Really?
35 cameras. And they're motion sensor cameras, so they don't record all the time, but theoretically, they're going to record a majority of the day.
Yeah.
The only time they would stop is probably during class when nobody's walking the hallways.
Right.
And that's only going to be for, 45 minutes to an hour?
Yeah.
Then class change, it's going to pick up recording again. So the FBI gets these hard drives, and they start looking for the exact time that Kendrick enters the gym. They find that before he walks in, there are several kids playing basketball. So all 4 cameras that are pointed in that direction should be recording. Because the motion of the kids playing basketball.
Yeah.
However, the corner that the mats are in, which also covers the kids, didn't record at all.
Okay.
Not only that, but there were 2 other cameras that covered kind of the middle of the gym. And both of them stopped recording at 12:05.
Okay.
And picked back up at 1:09. There was another set of cameras that both stopped recording at 11:05 and started back up at 1:15. So these are 4 cameras that stop and pick back up, which isn't uncommon because they're motion sensor.
Right. But if there's motion going on, they should be recording.
Right.